I guess everything is working. And hello, everybody. I can't see a thing without my glasses. So. There we have it. Welcome. Don't be shy if you're on there. I'm going to watch, what am I going to watch? I've been looking a long time to do this. I have not live streamed what the hell I wanted to live stream for a while. So I'm really looking forward to this and a lot more of it. So stay tuned. Tonight, though, I thought I'd watch because so many people enjoyed, as I did, Starblazers, Space Battleship Yamato, right? I mean, you can't go wrong. And those two early versions, I didn't even realize Space Cruiser Yamato, that was like a dub that was done like a year before, previously. And then you think, this came out 3 years prior, before, of course there was plenty of science fiction out there, but before even, it was some people thought it was a Star Wars ripoff. I mean, this thing was made before Star Wars was even in this public consciousness, so I don't know what okay. I pieced this together, and I clearly did not get rid of audio in one of those clips, so that's why it's all sped up, because these computer animations are usually pretty slow, too slow to just sit there and watch. So let's see what's going on here. Space, the making of, and it's also narrated by Ken Meserol. I believe I'm saying that correctly. My mic stand didn't come in, so I gotta do this. So I'm gonna go off camera for a while. Never mind my seizure test. This is pretty interesting. I tried to upload this.
1945, a state-of-the-art battleship took the sea on behalf of the Japanese Navy. She was meant to turn the tide of the war against Japan's enemies, and was given a name that embodied the spirit of the nation itself, Yamato. Hopelessly outgunned, she finished her mission at the bottom of the South China Sea. There she remains, the metal of her hull disintegrating along with old animosities. Once Japan and America had traded in destruction. Now they trade in entertainment. This is where Yamato's legacy lives again in a bold new form. Words like classic, epic, and legendary are often overused in our time. But once in a while, something comes along that truly warrants them. In 1974, something did. It was called Space Battleship Yamato, and this is the story of how it happened.
We would rush home every day after school.
In the 1960s, children's animation had become a mainstay on Japanese television. Favorite programs that were later renamed Astro Boy, Kimba the White Lion, and Speed Racer helped to broaden the medium into many genres. It became known as Terebi manga, or TV comics, since many of the programs were based on popular comic strips. By the early 1970s, Terebi manga expanded to include sports, superheroes, and giant robots. There wasn't much science fiction, though, and one producer thought it was time to change that. His name was Yoshinobu Nishizaki. His background in music and theater had led him into animation in 1970 when he became the manager for Osamu Tezuka, the creator of Astro Boy. Nishizaki's company, Office Academy, produced 2 animated TV programs called Triton of the Sea and Little Wanza. But his next project would take quite a different direction.
I'm going to take a break right here because I don't want to get in trouble with the copyright. Because I tried to put this up before and they were like, no, you can't do it. So I did this Starblazers, as I came to know it, was the first anime I think I was introduced to. I don't remember Speed Racer. It's not that it wasn't on, but when this came to Boston in 79 on Channel 25, I believe it was on another station too, 38, but I don't remember it on there. I may have watched it and just forgotten it, but I was about 6 or 7, so this was a big deal because at that point, the only thing that was really on after school is like, how much Tom and Jerry can you watch? Mighty Mouse is getting a little, Bugs Bunny is funny and everything, but, enough's enough with this, 30-year-old shit.
The year was 1973. 26 animated TV shows and 5 feature films made their debut in Japan. Nishizaki wanted to produce a science fiction series and worked with his closest friends, directors Eiichi Yamamoto and Oritsune Toyota, to develop one. They called it Asteroid Ship Icarus.
And this is where the asteroid belt all makes sense, that asteroid, where they camouflage the ship in asteroids. This explains all of it.
Earth is slowly losing a war against an aggressive alien race called the Legendara. Radiation bombs have poisoned the surface of the planet and driven the human race underground with only 1 year to live. One day, a satellite detects an alien ship that has crashed on Mars, and it turns out to have come from a distant planet called Iskandar. It carries a message of hope, inviting humans to obtain the key to their salvation. A special ship is required to make the journey, or, in this case, a giant rock. This is the voyage of Asteroid Ship Icarus. A huge chunk of rock provides perfect camouflage for exotic new warp engines and weaponry such as a heat ray gun and a nuclear bazooka. It offers its crew all manner of high-tech comforts, such as an image garden where they can view holograms to remind them of life on Earth.
Wow, did they have the holodeck before Star Trek? I'm sure that was like an idea in earlier science fiction.
Communication with home is made possible.
Or was it?
By a huge radio tower over a mile high.
Although these concepts were pretty standard fare at the time, one of Toyota's more progressive ideas was to bring young people together from all over the globe to form the crew of Asteroid Ship Icarus. The heroes of the
USS Benetton
show would be men and women from Europe, Asia, America, Africa, and elsewhere, all working together with a common goal of saving their home planet.
And that's right up there with Star Trek, the same deal.
Not many Japanese programs had broken this ground, and it was also thought that international characters would make the series more appealing to international markets. There was also the thought that it could be a live-action drama rather than an animated one. It's impossible for us to know what would have happened if Nishizaki and his crew had gone ahead with this idea, but history has already recorded what happened instead as a result of another man's influence on the story. His name was Leiji Matsumoto, and he brought to the table a unique sense of storytelling. He'd been a professional comic book artist since high school, and in the years since he had explored many different genres, from romance to comedy to historical dramas and science fiction. It was his design sensibility that convinced everyone they should treat this as an animated program in order to have full control over its imagery. When Matsumoto was asked to further develop the story, his first step was to get rid of the giant rock.
Yeah.
As a lifetime World War II buff, he found a better candidate for the hero ship when he chose to resurrect the Yamato. She'd been created to defend Japan, but now she would fight for all of Earth. Never one for feats of brazen over-the-top heroism, Matsumoto changed other aspects of the story as well, bringing the characters down to earth and matching the somber mood of the early 70s.
The Japanese have built a miraculous economy and have an abundance of material things, but we are all just helpless cogs in the machine of the industrial world. Will we find a way out of our predicament? History will allow us to determine this. The human civilization has lived through a number of dangers and somehow managed to survive to the present day. We created Space Battleship Yamato to teach not only the adults, but also children the importance of having dreams and understanding ourselves. This is a science fiction adventure drama about a spirited group of young men and women. What I want to emphasize through their actions is that love defines our humanity.
Matsumoto's treatment of the story was much closer to the final program. The international nature of the crew was eliminated, and they were all now to originate from Japan. The initial concept of Earth's imminent demise was kept, along with the message from Iskandar. The enemy aliens were now called the Gamelas, and they were humanoid in appearance. Their leader, Dessler, was destined to become a fan favorite. Also, an existing Matsumoto character called Captain Harlock was to play a major role in the story. However, this process was not entirely free of creative conflict.
Mr. Matsumoto redesigned the characters, but Mr. Nishizaki rejected all of his designs for the male characters and commissioned over a dozen artists to come up with alternates. Mr. Matsumoto was understandably upset, so he asked the producer to let him create just one male character. That became Dr. Sato.
In April 1974, a presentation booklet was completed for Space Battleship Yamato.
There was like a likeness,
the interest
though, in especially Dan Gardeas, because they were animated by the same people. Derek Wildstar looked a lot like that. The Doctor and Dan Gardeas.
Japan's Yomiuri TV network, who
Part is here to the other side.
commissioned a 10-minute pilot film in anticipation of a 39-episode pickup for the fall.
I worked on the pilot film, and Masahiro Okasako was the chief animation director. We finished the pilot around the end of July and planned to start the TV broadcast by October. Unfortunately, Mr. Okasako got very sick the night we finished the pilot and was coughing up blood. Suddenly,
Damn.
we had no chief director, with our first episode being due in 2 months.
You hear about this, though, if you read like the history of these shows, like just how stressed out and like not enough time, not enough anything, and it's always just everyone's just crunching and crunching and crunching.
I tell you, we were all seeing red at that time.
Despite this early setback, the first episode made its debut on schedule, Sunday, October 6th, 1974 at 7:30 p.m.
So I was like, I was about to be 2.
Somehow, we managed to finish the first episode on time, but then we had to complete the second one a week later, and a new one every week after that. We were so rushed. The voice actors had to read their lines to scenes where the color was missing, or worse, where there was no picture at all. By the third episode, we were way off schedule, and we ended up delivering each show to the TV station on the day it was broadcast.
Alongside Nishizaki as the producer and Matsumoto as the chief designer were other craftsmen with unique skills and histories. This included the award-winning composer Hiroshi Miyagawa, whose magnificent score for the Yamato series would soon have a life of its own.
You know what? That's not actually an unfair statement. It really is. The music here is really, it's amazing. I'll put it up against any soundtrack you got.
I was fascinated with this.
It's really some beautiful music and some really good driving anthems.
So I put all my creative energy into the music. Mr. Nishizaki and I kept up heated discussions long after we looked like ghosts, and spent nearly 20 hours recording just one piece of the theme song. One usually does not have many chances to exceed himself in his lifetime, but Yamato taught me how to live as a man of passion.
Miyagawa's composition for the opening title was combined with words by award-winning lyricist Yu Aku and the rich voice of vocalist Isao Sasaki. The result was one of the most rousing theme songs ever recorded. But Yamato's MVP was definitely Leiji Matsumoto, who stepped up to the plate and contributed far more than anyone had expected.
That song, though, seriously, I mean, it tells you the whole thing. It tells you everything you need to know about the show right before you're ready to go. It's catchy. It hooks you. It does everything it's supposed to do. So many things. You say like lightning in a bottle. You could put it like Star Wars, right? If one of those elements fell flat, like they say, it was saved in the edit or the music or whatever, all those components together. Only this, I'd say, is a little bit. No, I'm not going to go on and say more original, but because George Lucas was just honest about where he got his ideas from. But Star Trek had already been on the air and stuff like that, so maybe it was the animation that made it seem to like stand apart. But especially back in the day, you're a kid. I was about 6 or 7 when this came on TV, and so it's like I said, it was either that or just another Hanna-Barbera cartoon, which there's only so much Johnny Quest you can stomach.
Initially, I was brought on only as Yamato's art director, but once production got underway, I became the overall director of the series. They left everything up to me, from the original designs to the final edit, and I kept changing things to suit my whims. In fact, I ended up doing about half of all the storyboards myself. My storyboards tended to stray from the written scripts, particularly in the first 5 episodes. I changed a lot of the dialogue and situations since they lacked the feeling I wanted to express. Before I realized it, I had rewritten complete episodes.
Wow, he was like in a complete, creative driver's seat.
Although the main characters had been reconceived as entirely Japanese, it was still assumed that the show would one day have to appeal to foreign viewers. This created some unique problems.
Although our Yamato has its roots in the original Battleship, we took extra care to distinguish the two. We didn't want this to be a war movie or some tale of military history. We avoided focusing on war banners, military marches, and the chrysanthemum crests on the bow of the ship. We eliminated altogether the military ranking system, consolidating the various posts. I really didn't care for keeping the salute, but we ended up creating the special Yamato salute by having the hand placed at the heart level. The Gamela salute resembled the German Heil Hitler, but in reality, it's used around the world. During production of the second episode, we had a major uproar over the inclusion of a traditional military march scene. We felt this would surely be misconstrued as a political statement, so we decided to change the music. These days, we wouldn't be concerned about it, but back then we worried ourselves silly over things that no other TV production ever considered.
The production tested the endurance of the staff as it had never been tested before. Many of them collapsed on the job. Some even needed to be hospitalized.
The art demands for Yamato were fairly difficult for the time. A regular TV episode ran between 3,500 and 4,000 cells, but Yamato easily ran through 8,000. This was accomplished because of the dedication of our many animators. They eventually became respected names in the anime field.
I also had to do the manga version simultaneously. I lost a lot of sleep and I became emaciated as a result. It was hell until I adapted to the workload. Since the manga was a monthly publication, the TV series sped on ahead, and I had a hard time catching up with it. I vowed I would never commit to such a schedule again.
Although it was really difficult at times, we worked to create as much realism as possible. Mr. Nishizaki was furious with me once for taking an entire day to set up a single shot. It involved an optical composite method we called skip photography, and it was used in the scene where Yamato is launching as the missile is exploding in the background. I nearly got fired over that one.
Naturally, the hardworking staff didn't have time to communicate with their viewing audience. Now, with the internet, we can take instant feedback for granted. But in 1974, there was only one way to measure audience response: the TV ratings. And a few weeks after its debut, Space Battleship Yamato had received a grand total of only 6%. There had long been skepticism over whether or not a science fiction series would be able to compete with other, more proven Terebi manga programs. And perhaps the skeptics were right. In a flash, the Yomiuri TV network dropped their commitment from 39 episodes to 26. The staff was devastated, especially Matsumoto, who was now forced to eliminate his entire Captain Harlock subplot from the series.
When the ratings came in, I thought all my ideas were wrong and I didn't have any talent. When the audience didn't accept this concept, I wanted to die because I had felt very positive about my work.
The series concluded its run on March 20th, 1975. Despite the low ratings, a tide was beginning to build among those who had tuned in. Although most animation fans had previously been grade school children, Yamato began to change this trend, attracting junior high, high school, and even college students, particularly females. Their influence was not felt in time to keep the TV series on the air past episode 26, but an unprecedented word-of-mouth campaign had led to the forming of independent fan clubs all over Japan. Many of them had printed their own amateur fan magazines, and it was one of these, Yamato Lab, that broke some exciting news in May 1975.
The fanzines are pretty interesting back in the day because, yeah, this was it. Pre-internet and a major publication. That was it. You didn't have nobody was talking about what you were talking about. I don't think bulletin board system, maybe in universities, bulletin board systems, maybe. But yeah, it was a different time. You go down to the copy shop, put your stuff on that copy machine, and I used to do that with cassettes. I'd make, you get blank cassettes, make your own cassettes, and I'd go down to the copy thing and make my own covers and cut stuff out or artwork and stuff like that from the band or whatever, and go down there and line it up and design the hell out of it.
Auto Revival is coming. A medium-length film centering on episodes 21 and 22 is being prepared for theatrical release. At the same time, a feature-length film for international release is also in production.
This announcement was partially correct. Nishizaki was indeed planning to turn Yamato into a movie.
So this was the whole space cruiser.
But he wasn't preparing it for Japan.
I began making arrangements to edit Yamato down for a foreign movie edition, but I needed funding. Then I learned that money could be made by selling the rebroadcast rights. By putting Yamato and Little Wansa together, we made a deal with Tohoku Shinsha Studios, but I had to really work at it to sell the shows.
To get started on the movie, Nishizaki needed a skilled editor. He turned to one of his consultants on the TV series, director Toshio Masuda. Masuda had earned international acclaim after supervising the Japanese production unit for the World War II film Tora Tora Tora. His job was to edit the 26 episodes down into a 93-minute compilation movie, which would be redubbed into English and renamed Space Cruiser. In addition to this, the audio portion of the movie would be released on an LP record. Meanwhile, despite Yamato's absence from the airwaves, fan activity was continuing to grow. A 45 RPM single of the opening and closing theme music was selling very well, and Leiji Matsumoto's manga version was collected into a paperback. In the days before VCRs, there was no way to re-watch a series unless it returned to television. And that's precisely what happened in September when a TV station in Hokkaido began the first rerun. Without knowing it, Nishizaki's plan to fund his movie project planted an important seed for the future. In October, Space Cruiser was shown at the Cannes Film Festival, and a distribution deal was made with Enterprise Pictures to show it in Europe the following spring.
Squadron Commander Kozai. We're being hit by bowgun bombers.
It was their ploy to draw the fighters away from the Yamato.
Yeah, where is this source tape? Got that weird one with the weird aspect ratio and the other one, but look at this one. This one looks great.
Oh, darn. Understood. Returning
Doesn't sound much better, but it looks a hell of a lot better.
back, Captain.
Gentlemen, the space cruiser Yamato has arrived. Up to now, it has been but a mere annoying pest. The time has come. I command you all the soldiers to squash the pest forever.
This is Stasha, Princess Condola. Oh, it must be Princess Stasha.
Reaction confirmed. Position 1830 megacycle. That wave signal's definitely coming from the planet Iskander, Commander.
I'm glad you took my advice and came to my planet. I'm always eager to help others. My Cosmo DNX will rid your planet of the deadly radiation. You are now located 08 light years from Iskander. I am sending you a directional beam. Follow it. It will lead you directly to me. You have finally come to my planet, Iskander.
Hey, Shane, we made it. Jason, we did it. We did it. We did it.
The next year dawned with Yamato's second rerun, this time on the Yomiuri network where it had started. To everyone's surprise, the ratings were starting to go up. Nishizaki's outlook also improved when Space Cruiser was reported to be doing well in Europe. This got him thinking about a Japanese release, and he was in fact sitting on a 3-hour version that he and Masuda had created. But he'd only had enough money to strike a single 16mm print, and it wasn't apparent that any theater would take it.
Producers are a curious breed of people.
Turn your mic back on. I'm curious what that 3-hour version they originally did would look like.
They need to find out one way or another if their projects are going to be a hit or a miss. The thought of leaving that question unanswered drives us crazy. In the end, I decided to spend my own money to rent a theater. And if the box office results were poor, then I'd wash my hands of the animation industry forever.
Early in 1977, a missing piece of the puzzle was revealed, and it turned out to be unnecessary for Nishizaki to make his solo last-ditch effort. Out, a specialty magazine devoted to animated programs and fan activities, carried the first-ever cover story about the growing popularity of Yamato. It was reported that over 20,000 fans had gathered in private clubs, and the demand for Yamato was now much greater than it had been in 1974.
Wow, look at that.
Last,
Right on, yeah.
it looked like the door was open. Toho Films agreed to back a 2-hour and 10-minute feature film. So Nishizaki and Toshi Masuda returned to the editing room and got back to work.
Mr. Nishizaki begged me not to cut certain scenes, and I had to tell him that a movie version could not be made without cutting something. I was greatly moved by his passion. He said he was willing to sacrifice profits to make the movie longer. He even said he would be satisfied with a version that could be distributed only as a late-night program. The only thing on his mind, it seemed, was to not let down the fans.
It's another pretty
This
piece of
attitude
music
was
right
shared
here.
by Office Academy's new licensing partners, who released some new tie-in merchandise throughout the summer. As the August debut of the movie drew closer, eager fans cleared store shelves of novels, LP records, and manga collections. The Yomiuri Network also got in on the act, starting another TV rerun just 1 week before the big event. In addition to the groundswell of fan support, Yamato was also helped by some very fortunate timing. Another science fiction movie was attracting attention in the summer of 1977, and it was fueling an appetite for more. Japanese audiences began to wonder what else was available, and it turned out to be right around the corner. On the night of August 5th, the tidal wave that had been building for so long finally crested. Crowds of loyal fans gathered at movie theaters to stay up all night just to be there for opening day. On August 6th, the tidal wave hit.
大ブームの渦に巻き込んだ SF 冒険アクション、ついに完成。新たな構想のもとに2年の歳月と2億円の巨費を投じた超話題作、宇宙戦艦ヤマト。時は2199年、銀河系から遠く離れた宇宙の彼方、ガミラス星からの攻撃によって地球は放射能汚染により地上は全て破壊され、人類は地下に進んでいた。しかしその運命はあと1年。ただ一つ救いは14万8000光年の彼方の星イスカンダルにある放射能除去装置を手に入れることだ。
私はイスカンダルのスターシア。私どもの星には放射能除去装置があります。これを使う以外に地球を救う道はありません。
人類滅亡の危機を救うため250年の眠りから覚めたあの戦艦ヤマトが今巨大な宇宙戦艦ヤマトとなって蘇った。いかなる敵の攻撃にも屈しない宇宙戦艦ヤマト。再び緑の地球を取り戻すためヤマトと共に運命をかける宇宙戦士たち。地球滅亡まであと366日。14万8000光年の彼方目指して宇宙戦艦ヤマトは今ロマンと冒険の旅に飛び立つ。行く手には想像を絶する危険が待ち構えている。
Yeah, seriously amazing memories. It's like I said earlier, we would rush home from school because we get out late for school. We get out at 3 in like third grade. So, and this was on at 3:30. I don't know too many people. I don't know too many people. Too many kids that didn't catch it. Or even like their older brothers that didn't watch it.
アニメで描きうる最高最大の凄まじいばかりの戦闘シーン。
See, they said it was either this or Tom and Jerry.
大スクリーンに展開する。
Mighty Mouse or Popeye. Bugs Bunny, which is running great, but and this came out like right after it was off to the races, and then you could advertise G.I. Joe and all that stuff could go on these shows. So, yeah, I just ran from there. But this was like the core for me. I was like 6 or 7 when this was on the air out of Boston in 79. So, I was right in my sweet spot. Like, in those formative years, you know, it's that stuff that just gets in your DNA.
Long gone were the single-digit TV ratings of 1975. Now, the movie theaters were mobbed, and other theaters immediately booked the film to meet the extraordinary demand. Those who had supported the TV series got a little thank you in the form of a newly animated finale that brought the film to a close. By even modest accounts, Space Battleship Yamato had become a blockbuster. Animation magazines had decided that the term terebi manga was now an anachronism and had replaced it with a more accurate word, anime. And the explosive arrival of the Yamato movie was considered the first official anime boom.
It is my personal belief that every film is born with its own fate. In the case of Yamato, we can say that the TV series had a very difficult delivery. But each character was born with a strong personality, which made for a strong
There's a way
drama.
I can do this off camera.
I was convinced it would eventually be a huge success, and it only needed time to ripen. Mr. Nishizaki's patience and uncompromising stand eventually led Yamato to full bloom.
By the time the film closed on October 28th, it had attracted well over 2.5 million viewers. In the movie's program book, Yoshinobu Nishizaki offered an explanation of what he had hoped to achieve.
The universal theme of films is love. There are many varieties, from the love among all human beings to the love between a man and a woman. Love is a theme the whole human race has in common. I consider this to be most important, so I hope to present films about love to boys and girls who are about to start their own lives.
Now, don't have to split
Flushed with the amazing
screens.
success of the movie, Nishizaki gathered his crew to celebrate at a party on November 5th. There, he made an exciting announcement. He wanted to create a sequel and had already signed with Toei Pictures to distribute a new feature film in the summer of 1978. Reaction was immediate and positive.
I recently put that up. It was never like dubbed and marketed here. Farewell, Space Yamato. That was never like at the time in the 70s. That was never officially released here. Under that, we just got like the season 2 Comet Empire stuff. So, but a lot of that was rewritten because it was meant to be the last one. So they kind of rogue one'd it and you couldn't go on from there. So at least not with... So I don't know even technically what's canon in that because I think that got rewritten, but I'm sure they're probably going to get into that.
And a few weeks later, the core creative staff began to map out a new story.
There were many requests to make a second part, and some requests not to because it might destroy the image. At first, I didn't want to do it for 2 reasons. We had already shown the drama of Kodai growing up, and the theme of choosing love over war had already been played out. But an image suddenly came to me of Yamato disappearing quietly and beautifully into the cosmos, and my desire to see that image convinced me to do another story. I visualized the finale of the movie first, then the music began flowing from this, connecting everything together.
Since the first movie depicted love on a global scale with the theme of saving Earth, the second movie would take this one step farther. The new theme would be universal love, based on the idea that without peace in the larger universe, there could be no peace at home. Fans were overjoyed to learn that they had a new Yamato adventure to look forward to, and in the month of December 1977, Office Academy had 2 big Christmas presents to deliver. The first was found on radio.
Fender Gibbs.
All Night Nippon, a popular radio program on the Nippon Hoso Network, had added a regular feature called Yamato Corner. This was now the home base for a 4-hour live radio drama, a modified version of the movie that kept fans up until 5 a.m. on December 1st.
I thought the Star Wars ones were good.
The second present was the kickoff of the official Space Battleship Yamato fan club. An estimated 120,000 fans had now formed over 200 private clubs, and this would give them a central forum with the publication of an official fan magazine. Several new Yamato products appeared in time for the Christmas
I will say that as far as like countries go, like if you were a kid into this stuff, like I would have been at the time and was, they hooked it up. Like they already had like those specialty magazines and all that ready to go. Everything was color. The video game manuals were always full color. I remember even when I got into music, I'd get like import CDs and they were like extra tracks and just done to the hilt, like special art. And it's just like, oh man, we just get this cheap shit.
Including a Roman album, the first in an ongoing series of books published by Tokuma Shoten that set a new standard for anime publications. The jewel in the crown, though, was the first collection of Yamato music composed by Hiroshi Miyagawa.
I have something up that I put up about maybe 3 weeks ago. I translated it, but you can put on the Google, you can put on the auto translate. It's a sound gift that they mailed out. It was those rubber flexi things, discs, and it was just a quick something from the producer. That was all of side 1, and then side 2 was like about the music, and then from whoever voiced Kodai and Yuki Mori. And so I thought it was just pretty interesting. Again, just one of those things. It's like, wow, I don't remember getting none of that crap being around stuff I was into when I was a kid.
His score stood head and shoulders above all others and was widely considered the most popular secondary aspect of Yamato. 1977 came to a close with the release of a Yamato Symphonic Suite, which is considered Miyagawa's masterpiece to this day. As 1978 began, Nishizaki and his team compared and polished their story ideas for the new film. Previously known only as Yamato Part 2, it had now been named Farewell to Space Battleship Yamato, Soldiers of Love. As indicated by the title, there would be a conclusive ending to the story.
Would you be in favor of Quentin Tarantino doing a Starblazers? Because I don't know if you're aware what almost happened. Disney was sniffing around the rights about 20 years ago or something, and they wanted to change it to USS Arizona, but they wanted to snatch it up, and they wanted to Disneyfy it. They wanted to like Zilla it, you know? They wanted to Zilla Starblazers. Can you imagine? The live action in 2012 was pretty good. If the Starblazers live action movie for 2012, they could have, yeah, it's all right. It's not this, but it's like this. It's of its time.
This was derived from what Nishizaki felt was their duty to pay off a theme they had introduced in the TV series.
The first Yamato story presented the drama of growing up through the main character Susumu Kodai. What's next after the boy grows up, faces his enemy, and finds love? After defeating the Gamalus Empire and achieving his goal, Kodai had doubts that he ever should have fought at all, and he should have sought love instead. The enemy was also human, and they might have had a justifiable reason to fight.
Well, they were kind of preemptively, radioactively bombing your planet, so I guess they did offer you slavery, so.
Now the second story keeps this most important point as the theme. Kodai must throw himself into intense new ordeals. He is not fully matured yet and has no choice but to continue fighting while gradually advancing toward a greater goal.
As part of their research, the writing group visited movie theaters in Hawaii and were amazed by what had been happening outside Japan.
Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind left me in a daze. The thought of having these movies compete with a new Yamato film was a shock to me. The stakes had been raised, so from that time on, our projects had to have a larger vision.
I don't know, the Comet Empire, that is a lot better than the Death Star, I think.
They had come up with some sensational designs, and we were determined not to be left behind. This all had an incredible impact on us at the time we developed Farewell to Yamato.
Toshio Masuda assembled everyone's ideas into a script, which was then revised by Leiji Matsumoto and Aritsune Toyota, who had been chiefly responsible for the story of the first TV series.
The first screenplay timed out to nearly 3.5 hours. The budget for this would have been huge and required us to print the film on 16mm instead of the usual 35. This would have meant a loss in picture quality.
This is what's like, you know, I mean, it's the process here is they're all together in a room. They're just spitballing ideas. They all, of course, do their own thing. But yeah, and you just wonder if there's something about that organic process of bouncing ideas off of each other that is a different feel. You can do it on the internet, you can do it like that, but to actually be physically in the same space, just the energy of that is like you hear like artists say all the time when they play live. There's just an energy.
The distributors were apprehensive about this, so we instead cut it down by an hour.
In the spring of 1978, the staff teamed up with animators at Toei Studios. United by the inspiring energy of Nishizaki, they quickly bonded and began the arduous production process. The fan club office was bombarded with questions about the movie, and the official fan magazine kept anticipation high with tantalizing glimpses of new designs and artwork.
Terasa represents the beginning and ending of this Yamato story for me, because after designing Queen Stasha for the previous story, it was hard to create another space goddess. She couldn't look too similar to Stasha, but she could not break the Yamato image. While I was thinking about this, I remembered the first girl's comic I drew. In it was a girl named Terasa. As I thought more and more about this, the image solidified for me.
On May 24th, Nishizaki conducted a press conference to update everyone on their progress. He confirmed that although Yamato would be facing a new enemy called the White Comet Empire, most of the major characters would be returning, including Dessler, the defeated leader of Gamalus.
Dessler is very popular, and I wanted to explore his character further. In most anime programs, the villain is just a bad guy and nothing more. This isn't a good way to define a character. Dessler has his own style, his own culture, and his own understanding of power. I wanted to define him in a way that wasn't shown in Part 1.
Nishizaki also announced that particular attention would be paid to the film's music, which would again be composed by Hiroshi Miyagawa. Lyricist Yu Aku was returning to contribute 2 new songs to the film.
It can be said that our period of history is starving for romance. To put it more dramatically, this is a sad time in which people forget to breathe. But perhaps there is hope. For it was the young people who, realizing their hunger for love, set Space Battleship Yamato out on a journey again.
One of Aku's songs would be performed by pop star Kenji Sawada, who also went by the stage name Julie. The song, called From Yamato with Love, was initially composed by Miyagawa, but another composition was offered by Kenji Sawada's own composer, Katsuo Ono. Nishizaki decided on Ono's version, which made this the one and only time that a Miyagawa composition was rejected from a Yamato project. Another surprise was Nishizaki's appointment of a professional fashion designer, Sachiko Hanai, to create costumes for the film's female characters.
This was my first animated film, and I've become very interested in the idea of an entire picture world. Usually, the work of costume design has many handicaps, such as the gap between the design image and the character of those who wear the costumes. But in Yamato, my concept was strongly preserved.
Only one of Hanai's designs would be used, but she also created a t-shirt that would be sold as spin-off merchandise. This was in keeping with the social phenomenon that Yamato had become. A steady stream of books and LP records was now flowing into stores. School supplies. I would have loved all this as a kid.
Wow.
It seemed that children, college students, and even working girls couldn't get enough of Yamato. Something else Yamato had fostered was the popularity of its voice cast, which was a new trend in the anime world. As the voice actors returned to their microphones in the month of July, many of them now had fan clubs of their own.
Many fan letters describe my
character.
character.
If anything sounds
Shima,
off or anything, just let me know. If something's too low or too loud.
Though he and Kodai are
scratchy.
equals, Kodai got Yuki and became the leader, and now Shima has to obey Kodai's orders. He's become the underdog. So Kodai fans and Shima fans are at odds with each other. This is an interesting psychological phenomenon.
Immediately after voice recording was completed, an unprecedented promotional event got underway. A concert tour called the Yamato Symphonic Concert. Starting in Tokyo, Hiroshi Miyagawa conducted the program in 2 parts. The first related to Yamato Part 1, and the second with music from the forthcoming movie.
You know, my grandparents took me to, God love them, they took me to some Batman live show in the 70s, I think.
Despite the film being in its last month of production,
I don't think as a kid I would have enjoyed a Batman symphony. But the influence, I mean, geez, this is right up there with Star Wars. I think the first Yamato movie actually outperformed Star Wars in the Japanese box office. So it was more popular.
Both Nishizaki and Matsumoto appeared live to answer questions and share backstage stories. Always eager to explore new ground, Miyagawa had composed a unique and adventurous new theme for pipe organ. Often relegated to religious music or Bach fugues, the heavy sound of the organ was used to great effect to express the evil of the White Comet Empire.
I wonder if any of this crossed over into Vanguard Ace.
Writing music for Part 1 was as satisfying as climbing a big mountain. But this time, thinking about Yamato's devoted fans all over Japan, I felt a pressure of responsibility that almost crushed me. The music for this film was born as a result of such struggles, so I can say with confidence that it will live up to the fans' expectations. Through my music, I hope the listeners can feel the main theme of the film: love between a man and a woman, the love of human beings, and the love of the entire universe.
Yamato music had begun to rival the popularity of Yamato itself. Close to 1 million LPs had already been sold, with no slowdown in sight. The Yamato theme was a national sensation, finding its way to stadium and glee club performances all over Japan. The symphonic concert was rebroadcast on All Night Nippon later in the month, and was soon followed by a new 4-hour radio drama based on the forthcoming movie. Once again, the voice cast assembled and kept listeners riveted until 5 a.m., pausing occasionally for Nishizaki to take calls from fans. Nishizaki had become Yamato's greatest cheerleader, appearing weekly on Yamato Corner, attending concert events, and even appearing in department stores to meet the fans. It was evident to everyone that his enthusiasm was the force that drove Yamato forward. As the release date approached, Animage magazine declared this the summer of Yamato fever. The proof could be seen on television, where the Yomiuri Network was now offering a third rerun of the TV series and recording double the ratings of the original broadcast.
His enthusiasm for this series is kind of reminded me. It made me think of Mark Hamill's enthusiasm for Star Wars. He was like just the greatest. What do you call it? Spokesperson for that they could ask for the franchise. He was a great sport.
On August 4th,
he is a great
Fuji
sport.
Television debuted the first Yamato feature film and earned a staggering 31 share in the ratings, meaning that almost a third of all the TV sets measured were tuning in. To attract even more attention, the animation crew created alternate footage near the end of the movie, which changed a key element in the story. By coincidence, 1978 was also the summer of disco fever, and Polydor Records responded by releasing a cover album to meet the demand. But nothing could compare with the scene outside Toei movie theaters on August 5th. Farewell to Yamato had done the impossible. It actually broke the record set 1 year earlier by its own predecessor. 500,000 tickets had been sold before the film opened, and fans in Osaka had already begun to line up a full week in advance. It was estimated that every theater showing the film had lines of almost 1,000 fans waiting overnight. In response, theater managers quickly moved to rent out neighboring theaters just to accommodate the fantastic lines.
ある日突然、全宇宙征服を狙う巨大な白色彗星が出現。多くの星を破壊し、今その脅威は地球にも及ぼうとしていた。全世界を爆発的ブームに叩き込んだヤマトの最新作、さらば宇宙戦艦ヤマト。かつて屈強の敵ガミラスを破った地球は再び平和と繁栄を取り戻していた。役目を終えたヤマトは今や廃艦処分となり静かに眠っていた。時に西暦2201年、地球は最も恐るべき敵を迎え、かつてのヤマト乗組員たちは再びヤマトに乗り込んだ。前作をしのぐ壮大なスケール、目を見張るダイナミックな戦闘シーンの数々。凄まじい猛攻、迎え撃つヤマト、そして死んだはずのデスラーが不敵にも再び戦いを挑んできた。
本当の戦いは勝ってね、五代君。きっと勝ってね。
巨大な白色彗星から続々と飛来する敵の CA 艦隊、そして あらゆるアイデアをつぎ込んだ想像を絶するラストの大仕掛け。永遠の愛と夢を乗せてヤマトは今最後の航海に旅立つ。フライホイール接続点火。ヤマト発進。限りない感動と美しいロマンを鮮やかに歌い上げた最大の話題作。さらば宇宙戦艦ヤマト。
These trailers do get you pumped up, though.
The moment the movie began, some audience members were already tearing up, probably anticipating the tragic ending suggested by the title. Whenever favorite characters appeared, a stirring mixture of sighs and sobs swept through the audience. The movie simply flew by and reached its final scene. The theater was filled with tears for Kodai, who alone steered Yamato against the menacing White Comet Empire to fight for peace in the universe.
ヤマトの艦長ならヤマトを信頼するんだ。ヤマトを信頼する？そうだ、お前にはまだ武器が残されているではないか。戦うための武器が。
お願いです、沖田さん。教えてください。どこにあるんです？何が武器なんです？
命だよ。お前にはまだ命が残っているじゃないか。
Some of the fans returned to theaters 3 and 5 times and created the groundswell for entirely new fan clubs. Once again, notes in the film's program book tried to explain this amazing impact.
Today, many people believe that life ends with the death of the body. This is a product of Western thinking that has crept into Japan since the Meiji period and the end of the war. However, since ancient times, Japan and the Orient has regarded life as immortal. Death happens only to the body. Farewell to Yamato is the materialization of such thoughts, and asks young people to decide which is the real way of life for mankind.
This video is kind of weird because it gets really loud and then it gets really quiet. So I don't know if this is just like a VHS, a copy. I don't think so. This was put out by Village Video. They had the rights at some point to Yamato and Starblazers, and they issued this as part of their DVD package because they got Ken Meserol, the guy who did Derek Wildstar's voice, to do he narrated most of this.
Would you die for your beloved? Would you protect your beloved even at the risk of your own life? Moreover, would you give your life to fight a great evil in the defense of an idea? While exploring these issues in detail, the drama will have more power and force, further enlarging its perspective. Kodai never turns aside, even when he faces the ultimate test. This must give hope and courage to those who insist on their own way of life, rather than being restricted by other people's rules. After Yamato has disappeared in the distance, the viewers will hear a song from space which asks, "What can you do now to create a wonderful tomorrow?" The song title is From Yamato with Love, and it symbolizes the theme of this film.
Many people have asked me why the first film was such a hit. If I knew that, I could make hit films anytime I wanted. I think the people of Japan found a sentimental place in their hearts for Yamato. There exists an eternal dream, which Japanese people of all ages share in common. Yamato speaks to that with care and beauty.
Almost 3 months later, the film closed after attracting over 4 million viewers and earning an estimated 4.3 billion yen at the box office, making it Japan's most successful animated movie of all time. This signified the peak of the second Yamato boom. Even before this point, it was obvious to Nishizaki and his crew that if they chose to launch the ship again, their audience was ready to go along for the ride. But there was a practical dilemma in their way. They would first have to figure out how to raise the dead. As usual, Leiji Matsumoto had an answer.
Mr. Nishizaki's original vision that inspired this film was an image of Yamato disappearing into endless space, taking all the characters with it. I got into a big argument with him over the idea of killing off everyone. One of my fundamental beliefs is that humans will do anything to survive. I am not fond of the actions of the kamikazes myself. I do not agree with sending youths on suicide missions.
Like all creative geniuses, Matsumoto's solution seems patently obvious in hindsight. So many ideas have been created for the movie that even a 3-hour script couldn't hold them all. He reasoned that the basis existed for another 26-episode TV series. If properly handled, it could fulfill the intent of Nishizaki's original vision, but give the characters a new lease on life that would reopen the series for the future. Nishizaki agreed, and Space Battleship Yamato 2 was a go.
宇宙の彼方イスカンダルへ運命背負い今飛び立つ必ずここへ帰ってくると手を振る人に笑顔で答え
Even before Farewell to Yamato said its farewell to movie theaters, Yamato 2 went on the air, debuting on the Yomiuri Network on October 14, 1978. With designs, story concepts, and a skilled crew already in place, the series benefited from a very quick startup.
Since I was on the staff of Farewell to Yamato as a technical director, my involvement in Yamato 2 was a natural result. The last part of the movie I worked on was the final scene, and I think we finished it a week before the release. Without any time off, I shifted over to production of Yamato 2. Just like on the first series, I was a director of animation. Mr. Matsumoto was too busy to come to the studio, so I became a sort of deputy supervisor in his place. This prevented me from doing some of the hands-on work, and I lamented it. Before, I could feel that I was creating something. The work was more personal. But being a director, particularly on a TV series, makes it impossible to do everything yourself. I tried it on Series 1, and for the first time in my life, I had health problems. It was worthwhile, but I couldn't do so now, even if I was asked to.
The production may have been new, but the pressures that came with it were all too familiar to the hardworking staff.
At that time, the number of anime programs was increasing rapidly. Compared to the time of Series 1, I think they doubled. Because of this, our former staff members were scattered, working on other shows, and we had half the number of animators compared to the first series. This made it a tougher production. It was all we could do to complete an episode just before it was broadcast. Because of this, I regret that I could not do everything I wanted.
Another unique aspect of Yamato 2 was that it directly inherited the intricate mechanical designs created for Farewell to Yamato, which had elevated the craft to a new standard. As a result, the bar was also raised for mecha design on television.
My job was to catch the design ball after Mr. Matsumoto threw it. We could add our own touches, but every design went through the Matsumoto filter to give it some uniqueness. Even though they are mechanical objects, they are also characters which compose the world of Yamato. I'm not sure I understood that in those days, but now I understand this is what design is all about. An important part of our job was to create new designs using the essence of Mr. Matsumoto's approach. Since he started out as a comic artist, he didn't know how other artists would interpret his designs. But when he finally grasped the entire process, he seemed quite moved. The new Earth ship, Andromeda, was created as a Yamato-sized ship, but it was an entirely new design, so we had to create it with this understanding. I designed its basic overall style. I also invented the twin wave motion guns.
Yeah, shotgun
Based on my
wave
design,
motion.
Mr. Matsumoto revised the bridge to add his own
Wave
touch.
motion shotgun.
I cleaned up his revised design. This was the basic process for everything. Mr. Matsumoto designed the look of the Comet Empire, and I designed the anti-aircraft cannon. Mr. Ishiguro also liked designing mecha, so he often drew rough sketches. We put a lot of passion into the
just
dogfight
all
scenes
looks
between
so
my
goddamn
anti-aircraft
slick.
cannon and the Cosmo Tigers.
The ultimate reward for this incredible effort and attention to detail was that Yamato 2 did not share the initial fate of the first series. The program concluded on April 7, 1979. This time, the average rating was a very respectable 22.9%. As promised, most of the main characters managed to avoid the fate that had been written for them in Farewell to Yamato. What's more, Dessler was no longer their enemy, and the ship, though heavily damaged in the showdown with the Comet Empire, was ready for a new voyage. 4 months earlier, when it became obvious that Yamato would have a life beyond its second TV series, the next phase of the saga had already begun. It, too, was going to shake up the anime world.
I know there's people out there that are like, you know what, when something's done, just let it go. A lot of people say that about Star Wars. A lot of people, should things just, I guess we'll never know, because nobody will leave anything that'll make a buck alone, so that's pretty much conjecture.
Yamato Part 3 would have a lot to accomplish as a story. 5 years had passed since the beginning of the saga. Time enough for...
Did you like the live movie? Did you anybody see the live movie? It was okay in 2012. It was okay. It wasn't bad. I wasn't like... I've watched it a couple times afterwards.
New generation.
It's all right. It's what you would expect. I think it's better than what it could have been.
Viewers to enter the fold, and they deserved a fresh start rather than another remake. At the same time, the first generation of Yamato fans were still fiercely loyal, and they deserved a continuation of what had gone before. Yoshinobu Nishizaki and his crew decided that both groups could be equally served by a story called The New Voyage. In January of 1979, Nishizaki tasked his writing crew to develop a new story worthy of the Yamato name. Its format had not yet been decided, but past success suggested that it should debut as a movie and then spin off into a TV series. With that in mind, The New Voyage made its way through 5 story drafts written by Hideaki Yamamoto, Aritsune Toyoda, and Toshio Masuda. Some ideas, such as a wedding between Kodai and Yuki, did not survive the process, but others demanded keeping, especially the new relationship between Dessler and the Yamato crew. It was also decided that a return to planet Iskandar and the addition of some new crew members would be an ideal way to ease new viewers into the world of Yamato.
The beginning of The New Voyage shows Yamato returning home after a narrow victory against the Comet Empire. At the same time, it shows a new beginning for Dessler and the Gamilus fleet. Return and departure. This symbolic crossing brings new interest and expectation to the drama. But the real theme that develops from here is about the love, hope, and indomitable spirit which were born in the storm of intense ordeal.
Dessler suffers a human-like agony through his love for Queen Stasha. Of course, there is a lot of combat, but the drama centers on human relations. The enemy, the Dark Nebula Empire, does not directly stand against Yamato since its goal is to mine the planets Iskandar and Gamilus. However, Stasha resists them and the conflict begins. On board Yamato, the training of the new crew is interesting to watch. There are also flashbacks to Part 1 for those who are seeing Yamato for the first time.
In order to maximize the viewing audience, this New Voyage would debut on television. Thus was a new format invented for anime programs.
I have not seen any of this whatsoever. I haven't seen any of the 2199. I've seen this, the Comet Empire. I've seen the 2 movies. I know there's probably a movie made out of it. There's like 4 movies out of this original batch. And then, I think.
The telefeature. The attention to...
But I've seen the first 2 seasons, and I've seen the live action, and that's it. There's a big gap in between.
Music also adhered to the Yamato standard. Hiroshi Miyagawa brought forth a creative blend of old and new scores, and Isao Sasaki returned to lend his voice to a new song that accompanied Yamato's launch. Another interesting musical touch came near the end of the film, when Japanese folk singer Chiyoko Shimakura performed a song dedicated to the infant Sasha. Shimakura was one of the leading names in a traditional singing style called enka, mainly popular among older audiences. This was also the first Yamato score to use a synthesizer as part of the Dark Nebula theme. This fertile soundbed helped immensely to drive the saga forward into a new phase. A step was taken to invigorate the fan audience on July 4th, when a month-long triple feature film festival began. The first two Yamato movies screened back-to-back, along with an earlier Nishizaki production, Triton of the Sea. As usual, fans started lining up.
We had like Godzilla triple features. I didn't live anywhere near places. Maybe I did, but
selling advance tickets.
I couldn't get myself there. I was too young.
The concept of the new voyage were unprecedented. The story made its debut in the traditional Yamato fashion, as a live radio drama on All Night Nippon. The 4-hour program aired on July 13th from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. with Nishizaki on hand as MC. The new voyage was finally broadcast on the Fuji network July 31st. The move from Yomiuri to Fuji caused some controversy. But since Fuji had previously broadcast the Yamato movies, it made sense for them to handle this one as well. The fans rewarded the efforts of the staff with a 25% rating, glued to their TV screens by a whirlwind of plot twists.
Because of my previous works, I've been regarded as a producer who creates love stories. There are many scales of love, from the individual to the universal level, and we can also say that love is a dedication to people. Since The New Voyage was meant to build a bridge to the next movie, the love theme would have to be a part of it. We see how the love of Dessler for Stasha overlaps with his love for his own people, which leads him to fight for their survival. He cries out when she sacrifices herself. This, in fact, is the first time we see him cry. Queen Stasha shares the destiny of Iskandar and must separate from her beloved daughter, Sasha, forever. But this makes the love between the mother and a child eternal. A new voyage is often accompanied by painful separation, but the film's ending shows that this does not bring an end to love.
Speculation ran high about what Nishizaki and his crew would do next. Fan magazines were full of praise and speculation. Previously, fan opinions had been split down the middle over which character was more popular, Kodai or Dessler. This dynamic was shaken up by their newfound friendship in the movie, and the debate continued on different ground. This was another of the many aspects that kept fans hungry for more. While they waited, an entirely different audience was about to join the party on the other side of the globe. 3 years had passed since Space Cruiser played in European cinemas, but Nishizaki had not abandoned his earlier notion of bringing Yamato to an international audience. Now that he had much more of it to share, he brought it to America. In the days before cable television, there were two ways to get a program on the air, either through the 3 major networks or through a syndication company that licensed programming to local and independent stations. Out of a desire to maintain some creative control, Nishizaki chose the second path and made an arrangement with Cluster Television to transform the first 2 TV series into a 52-episode package. Cluster, in turn, hired a company called Sunwagon to take on the production work. Since the Japanese nationality of Yamato's crew had never been particularly central to the story, it was not difficult to endow them with Western names and personalities. The same was not true of the ship, however, and since the program was being tailored for an American audience, a significant name change was in order.
Centuries ago, another ship sailed out on another important mission. It was called the Argo. In honor of our mission, we have renamed our ship the Argo.
It naturally followed, then, that a new name was needed for the series itself.
Our Starblazers, searching for a distant star, heading off to Iskandar, leaving all we love behind. Who knows what dangers we'll find?
Production continued into early 1980, during which time the episodes were edited, reformatted, and dubbed by a remarkable ensemble of voice talent. I was impressed by that there was a quest, that this mission that these kids and this starship was on, that there was a quest behind it, that they were, and that there was a purpose to their mission. It wasn't just random violence, it wasn't gratuitous.
They just suddenly appeared. Where did they come from?
Wildstar, where are you? We're under heavy attack. Can you hear me?
So that was a trap to lure our fighter planes away from the Argo. Captain, we're on our way back.
There was one time, I think, after we were all set as a cast and we were signing contracts, whatever it was we were doing, and there were members of the original production company from Japan that had come, and there was a reverence and a veneration of this show.
Oh, sure.
And we were, almost told that we had to understand this, and we were shown the first few episodes where the Yamato became the Argo, and there was these gentlemen that were of that came over. They were Japanese Americans, I assume, with Japanese descent, and you could see that they would be speaking and saying, it's very important that you understand this is a very respected show.
Yes.
And
Deathlock basically was, I guess in a sense, an homage to Boris Karloff, because I was such a fan of his and he just scared the bejesus out of me when I was a kid. I kind of modeled Deathlock as the Boris Karloff character.
He did have a swagger.
This is an important day in the history of Gamelon. The Star Force has arrived. It is now on the edge of our galaxy. I have plans to ensure its destruction.
I guess the thing that kind of stands out is that Deathlock was just a really cool character, and I wish I had the opportunity to play more of that type of guy. There's just kind of like, he had this cool about him, this evil cool.
Yeah, he was like a smooth badass.
We didn't really know the actual foundation for this show and how really, really, really important it was to the Japanese people. But now, so many years later, to hear the respect that everyone has for the work we did just, adds to the importance of the show itself. And it just makes me really proud.
Starsha, this is Starsha of Iskandar.
That is Starsha, isn't it?
Yes, that's the right heading, 1836M. That's where Iskandar is. Go ahead, Queen Starsha. We hear you.
This is Starsha of Iskandar. This is a great moment, Star Force. You have almost reached your destination. Iskandar is the 8th planet orbiting around our sun in what you call the Magellanic Cloud. You have withstood many dangers, I know, but at least you are almost here. Follow our radio signal as a guide straight to Iskandar.
Venture! Wildstar!
Starblazers first appeared on American television in April 1980 and played to steadily growing audiences in all major cities for the next several years. Unlike earlier imports, such as Battle of the Planets and Speed Racer, Starblazers made no secret of its Japanese origins.
All right, I wonder now then, maybe it was 1980, because I know Force 5 came on the air. Sorry, I'm having a sandwich.
Would play a pivotal role in exposing American audiences to a unique art form. American children were accustomed to episodic TV shows that could have been viewed in any order. Starblazers changed all that with its tight continuity and its suspenseful daily countdown. The power of the storytelling inspired deep devotion and began a phenomenon that continues today.
I thought for a split second when I was a little kid, when they said it's 3 hours, I thought there was like, wow, they're going to do like an episode for every day. No, they're not going to do an episode for every day. You're a kid. You go, wow, that'd be kind of neat. I'd watch this every day of the year.
With anime flowing freely into mainstream pop culture. In Japan, this phenomenon had a 20-year head start, and by the end of the 70s, anime had become a major industry. But none of the previous strides could compare with what was coming next. As the new decade began, anime was becoming a fiercely competitive business. As the great success story of the 70s, Yamato was still on top of the heap. But Nishizaki knew that to stay there, he would have to put his gift for innovation to the test once again. With more and more projects demanding his attention, he changed his studio name from Office Academy to West Cape Corporation and expanded his company's production capabilities. Throughout this process, Yamato was always foremost in his mind.
My original concept for the next story was that Yamato would search for a new planet for humankind as the Earth's sun was progressing toward a supernova. But it became obvious that we couldn't do everything I wanted in one film, so Leiji Matsumoto suggested something else. We could save this concept for another TV series. This excited me as a producer, because I could depict a magnificent story without holding back in any way. We then decided to co-create a new movie called Be Forever Yamato. In it, I'll suggest that if Earth is the most beautiful planet in this vast universe, it's because human beings trust one another. This is the theme I want to express to the children of today.
Be Forever went into pre-production at the beginning of the year with a 3-month crash program to create the scripts, designs, and storyboards. During this period, the script was revised 6 times. Photocopy costs exceeded 4 million yen, and paper documents filled 6 boxes. The budget for pre-production nearly doubled that of the previous film. Millions of yen were spent on research alone, in which the staff examined books and films from all over the world to avoid imitating other works. In the process, they were delighted to learn that Yamato itself was gaining world-class status around the globe. Animation production began in April, but the movie's plot was still shrouded in a veil of secrecy that kept the fans ravenous for details. Finally, in the early summer of 1980, West Cape Corporation launched a campaign that went far beyond a simple movie premiere. Nishizaki was about to raise the bar on movie promotion and reignite Yamato fever. On June 7th, after 2 days of rehearsal, All Night Nippon presented a Be Forever Yamato radio drama in its now usual slot of 1 a.m. The entire voice cast and many of the animation staff members were in attendance, and the first of 3 new songs was presented by vocalist Akira Fusei. By the end of the program, the studio was completely surrounded by adoring fans. On June 29th, a ticket lottery was held for an unprecedented form of film promotion, a sea cruise with the cast and crew. Fans had already been lining up for 3 days, eventually growing to a mob of 14,000 vying for only 500 slots. The crowd went into an uproar whenever the winning numbers were announced. Voice recording for Be Forever took place from July 13th to 15th at Abaco Studio.
These are such
Old
cool
friends
ideas
and new
for
recruits
promotion.
alike sequestered themselves for 3 consecutive days to guarantee a performance that would surpass their previous ones. Completion of the voice recording officially moved the film into post-production. On July 20th, the sea cruise commenced, called The Voyage of Adventure Roman. A luxury passenger ship, redecorated to look like Yamato, launched on a 3-day round trip between Kawasaki and Hyuga. There were greetings from Captain Nishizaki, Chief Navigator Matsumoto, many of the actors, and even singing sensation Isao Sasaki. The fan crew enjoyed a variety of events, such as film screenings, photo and autograph sessions, treasure hunting, and fireworks. There were also chances to participate in sea rescue training. Sailboats and helicopters greeted the ship's arrival at Hyuga Harbor. On July 24th, the concert event called the Yamato Festival in Budokan was held in a stadium that had been built for the 1964 Olympics. The event was both comprehensive and breathtaking. Scenes from the new film were previewed, the cast and crew appeared on stage, and Maestro Hiroshi Miyagawa conducted the orchestra, which performed many new pieces. Isao Sasaki sang the Yamato theme. Other vocalists also participated, presenting new songs that had been written for Be Forever. Altogether, 15,000 fans attended the festival. On July 28th, a smaller fan festival was held called Yamato Fever 80. It was another theatrical event that offered teaser scenes from Be Forever, this time hosted by Leiji Matsumoto, who was taking a break from the crush of post-production. The next day, July 29th, the train trip began. Also known as the Mystery Tour, the stated destination was Icarus, the secret asteroid training base. It was actually Lake Nagiri at Nagano Prefecture. All this and more created a buildup that has yet to be topped more than 20 years later. But another secret still awaited. The movie opening was now only a few days away, and nothing yet had been revealed about warp dimension, a mysterious technique that promised to change the way movies were seen. Fans were still buzzing about this one as they started lining up the night before the grand opening. Theater owners who had hoped for some advance publicity were not disappointed. Fans turned up by the hundreds and lines stretched around the block. Saturday, August 2nd began with a train ride on the Yamato Go. An engine on the Toyoko line had been renamed for the occasion, and Leiji Matsumoto served as the conductor. That same morning, Nishizaki and a few of his partners appeared at a theater in Tokyo.
It's a bouncy little tune
right there,
isn't
the
it?
waiting was over. To the fans, it had been worth every minute.
全国500万ファンの熱い声に応えて、今、ヤマトが帰ってきた。西暦2202年、ある日突然地球上に巨大ミサイルが軟着陸。さらに不気味な敵が続々と襲ってきた。防戦むなしく地球は占領されてしまう。そしてそこから壮大なドラマが始まる。
I may hunt this down
宇宙戦艦ヤマト最新作
later tonight.
ヤマトよとわに。新艦長山並のもとおなじみヤマト乗組員が勢ぞろい。美しく成長したスター社の娘サーシャも加わり、パワーアップしたヤマトは運命の旅へ。目指すは40万光年の彼方にある暗黒星団帝国。そして大宇宙に展開するアドベンチャーの中に彩りを添える愛と感動。お互い熱い思いを抱く古代進むと森行きの行く末は。君は重核子爆弾の解体の秘密を探ろうとしているのだ。教えたっていいんだ。私の愛を受け入れてくれるならばね。ヤマトの魅力の全てを結集し、空前のスケールと意表をついたどんでん返しの連続、そしてものすごい仕掛けを投入したこの映画はかつてない迫力で君を魅了する。突然目の前に何かが起こる。アニメ史上初のワープディメンション方式を取り入れた最高の話題作「ヤマトよとわに」。いよいよ8月2日全国一斉ロードショー。
I'm going to start waking up to that theme. That's bumping. I mean, that gets
In
you
addition
going.
to the high drama of its story, the film represented a huge step forward in production values. With the cooperation of Japan's most advanced video processing center, Be Forever Yamato introduced a new technique to Japanese cinema called scanimation.
Originally, this technique was invented by NASA. It allows us to convert an image to video and electronically enhance it. The scanimation pictures do not use animation cell layers. This is a very good method for creating depth, but it does not have the same sense of weight. For example, when a cloud moves, its shadow moves across the ground. Scanimate is similar because it is a video image composed of light.
The Yamato itself had gotten a facelift that added more character and made a strong visual impression on the audience. As a nod to the roots of the original series, the ship was hidden inside the asteroid Icarus. This made for an especially symbolic launch scene that took both the characters and the audience into new territory.
We took greater care than usual with the characters' facial expressions. We also have more close-ups than usual. In the scene where Sasha reveals her identity to Kodai, and he tells her about the death of her father, her emotion was expressed by her hair. Sasha's hair sways, even though there's no wind. Another sequence to watch closely is the dogfight at the supply ship. The very accomplished animator Yoshinori Kanada supervised this sequence, and it feels different from our previous works, in a very positive way. Also, the scene in which Yamato destroys the enemy's mother planet with the wave motion gun is particularly notable. Noboru Ishiguro personally drew key animation for approximately 30 scenes, bringing his own sense of dynamics directly to the screen.
But what about the mysterious warped dimension? Here's how it worked.
The aspect ratio of the movie changes from VistaVision to CinemaScope when Yamato leaves the Dark Nebula and the new galaxy appears. The picture becomes approximately 30% wider. It is not technically more difficult to produce animation for CinemaScope, but the standard frame size is more common because the individual cells can be smaller. This time the most complex lighting effects were the artificial city and the skeletal planet Dazarium after the explosion of the fake Earth. There are as many points of light as you can imagine, so we had quite a hard time with it.
Over and above the technical aspects, Be Forever glowed with powerful themes, both dramatic and musical.
The previous film described love on a wide, universal scale. This work started afresh with the idea of focusing on the familiar love of human beings, centering on Kodai and Yuki, who are separated from each other for the first time. This sort of story could easily be over-dramatized in a live-action film, but with the expressionism of animation, I could direct it as I wished. Of course, I paid very careful attention to the action to make this a first-class entertainment movie, but beyond that, I really wanted the audience to experience the vibrant love between a more mature Kodai and Yuki.
A film score that is not harmonized with the characters or scenes does not shine, even if the film itself is the finest work. Ever since the first Yamato series, I've been compelled by this thought. Whenever I compose new music, I think about how the piece needs to be presented in the film, and it gives me such agony that I lose sleep at night. But during the process, I realized all over again that Yamato's characters and the story are very clear and original. This sets Yamato apart from most other films. Be Forever Yamato inspired me to ponder the depth and subtle relationship of music and drama.
All of these efforts were amply rewarded once again by an incredible turnout for the film. Over 2.3 million viewers had seen it by the time it closed on September 26th. Incredibly, they had only 2 weeks to recover before Yamato was off to outer space again. On October 11th, a new TV series called Space Battleship Yamato 3 debuted on the Yomiuri Network. The veteran writing staff had reunited to develop the story that Nishizaki originally conceived for Be Forever. It was planned out for a lavish 52-episode run that would capitalize on the Yamato fever that had set so many records earlier in the year.
宇宙の彼方イスカンダルへ運命背負い今飛び立つ
In many ways, the story was a return to the style of the first series. The Earth was again endangered, and a fresh young crew joined up to embark on a fateful voyage. Even the concept of an episodic countdown was reinstated to invoke the drama that made the original series so suspenseful. This was also the largest-scale Yamato story that had yet been conceived. Set against the backdrop of an interplanetary war, a plot point meant to mirror the Cold War between the global superpowers of the 1980s. Dessler returned in an expanded role, and the new characters were very much like the regular Yamato crew in the early days, which provided great contrast to the maturity they had gained.
In previous stories, Yamato saved the Earth from invaders, but this time, Yamato takes off on a mission to find a second Earth, owing to abnormal changes of the sun, and I think this shows a different aspect of Yamato. Kodai is appointed as captain, and the new crew members bring changes to our story and characters.
Nishizaki and his staff were excited about all the new opportunities they had created for themselves. But by the end of the year, the ratings had maxed out, and it appeared Yamato fever had run its course. Whereas in 1974, the staff would have been overjoyed with such a rating, this was no longer the case in 1980. Owing to the vast increase in anime programs, a factor brought on by the popularity of Yamato itself, 15% was no longer above the baseline that made a program competitive. Ironically, In reviving the spirit of the first series, they had inadvertently revived its downside. 6 years had passed since that first setback, but the solution was the same. The 52-episode scenario was scaled back to 25, and half of the story had to be abandoned. Despite this, loyal fans tuned in every week through the end of the series, and in the years to follow, Yamato 3 came to be regarded as essential as any other chapter in the Yamato saga. Equally memorable was the spirit of the staff, whose devotion never wavered. It was a clear reflection of the theme they had followed since the beginning.
Humans have a power that can overcome desperation, and that power is love. We often have a sense of being held back, but I don't want young people to lose the spirit in their minds and their hearts. Young people can discover the future, and any person can discover the happiness of their own life.
I was a member of the Yamato staff from the early days, and this time I was selected to direct Series 3. Since this was not a sequel to a previous movie, it was difficult to create a new story at the same high standards. I had a hard time making the new crew members recognizable as true Yamato characters. I regret not being able to give them more active roles since we were forced to conclude the story in the last 5 episodes. Each story has a theme, and I hope viewers can grasp the specific theme of Yamato 3. That is, you need to face reality and act upon it despite pain and suffering.
I think the art in this series shows a great sense of consistency. As new Yamato stories were created, the art style became more colorful and showed deeper sensibilities. In Series 3, we expanded our palette for outer space with deep, rich colors. Green for the Galman Empire, red for the Bolar Federation, and blue for the planet Shalbart. Also, the surface of a planet should not look the same as the Earth simply because it has atmosphere. So I used different colors there as well. On Planet Phantom, for instance, I emphasized the good points of the Earth and then rearranged them. This was my favorite setting.
5 years later, after waiting patiently, American fans finally got to see Yamato 3 when it was retitled The Bolar Wars and added to the Starblazers lineup in 1985. Strangely, it had a similar fate in the English-speaking world, entering the television.
See, I'm familiar with the Bolar Wars, but I don't ever remember watching it. I don't remember it was on. Maybe this is when people, because like I said, I saw the first 2 seasons out of Boston on Channel 25, and people said it was on Channel 38. But I clearly wasn't watching, I don't know, 85. I don't know what else was going on. But I doubt I watched it and forgot about it.
Television arena during a period of high competition and receiving very little exposure. But home video eventually came to the rescue, and the 3rd series would come to be known as The Lost Episodes. Back in Japan, 1980 ended with a flood of both memories and merchandise.
There's a place, I put a video up with Boston 25. It's only a couple minutes long, and it had a commercial, Mr. Big's Toyland in Massachusetts, and that was the only place that I knew of. Never went, never made it there. But they imported all this stuff.
Books, records, and much more flowed out of Yamato headquarters. And despite the downbeat of Yamato 3, Nishizaki wasn't.
I mean, can you imagine? Wow, I would have loved to have had one of these as a kid. You couldn't get no Starblazers merchandise at Child World or Zares.
Finished yet. The last episode of the 3rd series aired in April 1981 and closed with this message.
Though the story of Yamato 3 is over, Yamato's battle to protect the peace will continue. Next year, it will have been almost 10 years since Yamato was born. To commemorate this anniversary, the Yamato saga will come to an end. Please look forward with hopeful expectation to the summer of 1982.
The message got loyal Yamato fans excited all over again, but they would have to wait a little longer than they thought. The last Yamato story would not come quickly or easily.
1 month after the end of Yamato 3, the main staff gathered at producer Nishizaki's office to begin brainstorming. After 3 or 4 meetings, ideas began taking shape, such as, what if our galaxy collided with another? Or what if we were absorbed into the Dark Nebula? Or what if Captain Okita was revived? Aratsuni Toyota thought up the idea about Planet Aquarius around this time, putting the Waterworld concept into place. It was determined that the audience would not be satisfied with the typical storyline of having Yamato defeat the enemy and save the day once again.
No, go back to Necro Avatar. That's a
postponed
winner.
further meetings for the next few months. And this gave everyone a chance to refresh their thoughts.
In the spring, fans got a chance to see the movies again. The New Voyage and Be Forever were screened as a double feature, bringing in another 1.5 million viewers, and both were broadcast on Fuji Television to commemorate Be Forever's 1-year anniversary in August. The Yomiuri Network closed out the year with a compilation movie of Yamato 3, and everyone looked forward to what 1982 would bring. Unfortunately, it wouldn't bring the last Yamato story, since it was still refusing to materialize.
In December, the story meetings resumed with fevered intensity on what exactly Yamato meant to all of us. There were long discussions on weapons ideas, societal issues, and many other topics. We were going to call the new enemy the Vulcans, but now they were called the Dingil.
Writing of the script began in the spring of 1982, and the first draft topped 500 pages, which would have equaled over 4 hours of screen time. Thus, many more meetings were required to resolve the overabundance of story threads. Despite these delays, the publicity machine got rolling again with the announcement that the concluding chapter of the Yamato saga would be a feature film called, appropriately enough, Final Yamato. This announcement set off a string of events called fan gatherings. They brought Nishizaki and other Yamato luminaries face to face with fans all over Japan. Nishizaki offered just enough information to get the fans buzzing. There were 3 big surprises. Kodai and Yuki would get married, Captain Okita would be revived, and Yamato would be destroyed. No one doubted that this would be a genuine finale. These controversial announcements brought a flood of letters into the fan club office. This was unusual for the anime industry, but not unusual for Yamato, which had built a great deal of intimacy between the staff and the audience. Very few anime programs have inspired so much devotion, either before or since. One more public event took place in October, when a party was thrown in a Tokyo hotel to commemorate Yamato's upcoming 10th anniversary. Songs were sung, memories were shared, and the staff prepared to get back to work. The writers had each taken their turn at the final Yamato script throughout the summer and fall, and although it still did not have Nishizaki's blessing, production was required to begin. The release date had been set for March 1983, and it would test everyone's endurance even more severely than before.
After the script was cut down, the storyboards timed out at 3.5 hours, so we still had to eliminate an hour. Half of that was cut during the storyboard revisions, and the rest was cut from the finished animation. I was actually the first victim of this when my own storyboards were partially cut, but there were victims at almost every stage, and it was heartbreaking.
1983 dawned with more new products and the radio debut of Final Yamato. All Night Nippon hosted their 5th and last 4-hour drama on January 15th, and Nishizaki delivered a press conference the next day to confirm that everything heard on the radio program was definitely going to happen in the movie.
Our lead character, Kodai, has always personified the theme. While on board Yamato, he's learned that the purpose of a life is to fight for love. But someday, he'll have to live up to this on his own, leaving the battleship behind. Therefore, the final story must depict this. Yamato must sink, of its own will, into the ocean of space. This is not a sad ending. This is the peaceful sleep of a hero. This is what the final chapter was meant to be.
Production continued with the animators fighting the calendar at every step. By this time, almost 1,000 people had been called in to deal with the phenomenal workload. Everyone, particularly Nishizaki, was determined to make this the finest voyage Yamato had ever taken. And no matter how impossible it became, his mantra was that they would have no regrets afterward if they kept up this killer pace.
We wanted to leave a legacy for the future of anime movies. We used different lighting effects and cutting-edge techniques. We also employed Scanimate and Slit Scan. For these reasons, every phase of production, from drawing the cells to filming the effects, was 50 to 80% harder than normal.
We realized that if we merely continued using standard animation techniques, the audience would hardly be impressed. So Mr. Nishizaki had us do many scenes over and over, sometimes more than 3 or 4 times to satisfy his criteria.
My scenes were a challenge because of their scale and spectacle. This included the waters of Aquarius and the scene of Yamato sinking. Believe it or not, it took 25 animators to make those scenes. Each person could only finish 2 cells a day. We worked until midnight every night, but we still had to get help from other production companies. I'd never spent that much time on just one scene.
On the music side, things were going a little better. Hiroshi Miyagawa was the natural choice to write the score for Yamato's final outing. But this time he had a partner, Kentaro Haneda, who would arrange and conduct the orchestra, which freed up Miyagawa to focus more intensely on the composing.
All right, I gotta catch up on my son. That big gap in Starblazers. That I gotta take care of that.
This was the first time 2 distinctly different styles were used on an animated movie, and they blended perfectly, neither upstaging the other.
You know what's hard about watching something later on is because when you see it when you're a kid or you're younger, it just hits your filters differently, but it's still the core kind of stuff. You know, so it's still the core storytelling. Like that new Grandizer came out. I checked it out. I just didn't. It's all right. I love it, but I want to play that video game too. But I don't know. It's just something about that original, just the way it hits. You know, you had to be there. You had to be there. It's not to say the other stuff is bad, but it's just you had to be there.
In a way, this was also a passing of the torch. After Yamato, Miyagawa largely retired from the soundtrack business, and Haneda would make his own mark by scoring the Macross motion picture the following year.
Oh, damn.
By the time of the voice recordings
some good music,
on February
too.
22nd, many scenes were still unfinished, which required the actors to improvise their performances more than once. Their past Yamato experience served them well in this regard, and gave them much to think about now that they had reached the end.
It was great to work together one more time. The pressure of doing a good job was lifted once we had finished, but it overlapped with equal feelings of sadness that I wouldn't be doing Kodai's voice ever again. The cast and staff gave everything they had to make Final Yamato, and we hope the fans keep watching and loving anime in the future.
During the 11 days before the release, we lived at Toei Studio. It took time for us to perfect the last scenes. Although the sponsors pushed us to finish on time, I had to insist that we weren't ready yet. I thought it was better to be late than turn out a bad movie. I think my stubbornness made the movie better, but it wasn't an acceptable excuse for the theaters who couldn't start their screenings on time.
Time continued to tick away, and with just 4 days to go until the release, the animators were still struggling to finish. They were perhaps relieved when, on March 15th, Nishizaki took some time off to participate in one last blockbuster event.
I never understood why corporations are that short-sighted to hit a deadline. They were like, oh, well, just put it out anyway, get it out, and it doesn't matter. We met the deadline, and it's like an inferior product. And it's like that stupid Atari Pac-Man game. You know, they're like, well, they gave me, only had 6 weeks from the ground up, and I could only have this much space on the cartridge, so it's like, okay, you're going to make your money on this. It's crazy. It's crazy.
The Yamato Grand Festival. It was a sort of farewell concert with Hiroshi Miyagawa conducting the Yamato Symphony Orchestra. Over 2,000 fans attended, scooping up souvenirs and examining artwork before taking their seats for the last chance to see all the big names on one stage.
Yamato is what it means to be young. At times it is sad, at other times it is filled with great joy. In the last 10 years, each of us has felt the connection to Yamato in their hearts. Now, Yamato is about to fade into silence. We will sing the last songs of Yamato to you. It has given us many vivid memories that will remain with us forever.
A procession of film clips, music sessions, talk shows, and even a trivia contest filled the evening. The show ended with vocalist Junko Yashiro performing a new song that had been written for the much-anticipated love scene between Kodai and Yuki. And Isao Sasaki brought the house down with one more rendition of the classic Yamato theme, which had now made a permanent place for itself in Japanese pop culture. The last 4 days were disappearing from the calendar, and production was now officially in crisis mode.
On March 18th, the night before the release, prints were driven to the theaters. At the time, I heard that it was snowing in one city, and it might delay the film's opening, but the truck left Osaka at 4 in the morning and delivered the prints just in time for the earliest show. Some prints were delivered by plane, and theater owners in Tokyo actually came to the studio to pick up their copies. Seeing so much effort and passion brought tears to my eyes.
The next day, many more eyes would shed tears as well.
1974年宇宙戦艦ヤマトが誕生した。あれから10年、数々の話題と人々の胸に熱い思い出を残して、ついに今ヤマトはその使命を終える時が来た。ヤマトは兄か、ヤマトは父か、それともヤマトは我が友か。兄なら時には手を挙げて激しく小言言ってくれ。父なら大きな胸板を嵐の試練に貸してくれ。西暦2203年、二重の危機を迎えた地球を後にヤマトは宇宙の彼方へ旅立つ。それがヤマトの最後の航海となった。さらばヤマト、もうお別れだ。名艦長沖田十三のもと、大和乗組員たちの明日をも知れない戦い。大和と共に成長してきた古代進と森行の心打たれる詩順の愛。
How are you there, Brad? Yeah, I'm missing out on some. It's like I said, I cut off after season 2, so I thought they were joking when they were like, we were kicking ideas around, we're going to bring Avatar back. Then I saw it, I was like, holy damn, they did bring him back. What's this about?
But even now, on the day of release,
thanks for swinging by.
Entirely over.
We finished the love scenes between Kodai and Yuki at the last minute, midnight on March 18th. But I was still not happy with them.
It's good storytelling. It's done before anybody else did it. Like I said earlier, this was done before Star Wars was actually in the public consciousness, you know? So, I mean, 74 as far as the original goes. I mean, there's clearly been science fiction, but I mean, the scale.
Screenings had already happened, so it could only be cut from the showings later in the day.
To everyone's amazement, Nishizaki immediately began one more project. He had just made the biggest anime movie of all time, and now he would spend the summer of 1983 making it even bigger. He had always wanted to see a Yamato movie in a deluxe 70mm format with state-of-the-art sound.
Yeah, me
now
too.
He was going to make it happen. Finally, Yamato was going back in the shop for a tune-up.
We ran out of time to finish revising the movie, but now we can. The staff and I are redoing scenes we weren't happy with, or couldn't completely finish. We're also restoring a scene with the Shima brothers. We first thought it was unnecessary, but later we realized it was important for the story flow. Normally this isn't done after a movie is released, but we all want it to be perfect.
This would also give Nishizaki a chance to revise the epilogue to his satisfaction and restore it to every print of the film. This version of Final Yamato hit the movie screens in November of 1983 and became the definitive edition for every subsequent revival on film and video. It had been 10 years since the debut of Yamato on television, and the climb from obscurity to immortality was now complete.
Yeah, real animation. No problem. I'm glad there'll be more to come, much more to come.
Although the Yamato saga was now over in terms of animated adventures, it was only beginning as a cultural legacy. In the years since 1983, Japanese animation has grown exponentially again and again, finding its way into many facets of international awareness. Yamato's contribution to this has never been forgotten. To the contrary, homages, tributes, and new Yamato products continue to emerge even 30 years after the debut. Of course,
Tell me
Yamato
about
has
it.
a link to living history as well, named both for the Battleship of World War II and also the clan that laid the foundations of modern Japan itself. One can even stretch the phenomenon into the realm of classic mythology, placing the saga alongside stories of fallen heroes who sleep under the earth until they one day awake to lead us into a brighter future. Whichever chord Yamato strikes,
I like that.
resonates with immortality. Classics and legends are not easily created, nor are they easily classified. If you set out to create one, brilliance, determination, originality, and luck are all prerequisites. But even they do not guarantee success. There is a deeper, undefinable quality that defies time and space. Space Battleship Yamato has that quality, and will continue to enthrall us for as long as we have the means to experience it again. On a more tangible level, the production standards set by Yamato during its 10-year journey are still firmly in place today. It is now customary for an anime film or TV series to explore new visual techniques and to be accompanied by a wide range of merchandising. The practice was pioneered by Yamato, and the tensions of supply and demand opened up many creative paths that had not existed before. The field of anime soundtrack music benefited most directly. A significant precedent was set by the use of a full orchestra and new recording techniques that expanded what the music was capable of achieving. These trends are commonplace now, but if not for Yamato's influence, they might have taken many more years to materialize. It should come as no surprise that many of the craftsmen who contributed to the saga are still active and continuing to produce spectacular animation. It is not an exaggeration to observe that their Yamato pedigree has made many of them into legends as well.
More than anything else, through this work I understood what it meant to collaborate with others. Yamato was an important step I had to go through to develop my career. Nothing else has been more important. Also, science fiction anime and robot anime have become almost synonymous. But Yamato exists as another option, and I find this very encouraging. In the future, when we present new concepts, some of them may be possible only because we have such a great forerunner. When we want to bring our dreams to life, the success of Yamato gives me great inspiration.
If life is a cycle of meeting and parting, then the Yamato years were full of great meetings. When I met producer Nishizaki for the first time, his passion awakened my imagination, and Yamato revived my youth. I'd been involved in live-action films for a long time, but Yamato gave me the opportunity to experience a totally different world.
The music, I mentioned it earlier too, the music is some gorgeous music. Like, I put it up against anything you'd hear classically written, by Bach or Beethoven or anybody like that. And even the anthem, the theme, and everything is just driving. It's right up there. People talk about John Williams and Star Wars, which rightfully so is really, really good music, and it resonates. It interprets properly the emotion. It just conveys it. It's just the right It's hand in glove. It just, everything hits right. And that's just this is animation. That's all. And it's just everything, the editing, the music, the original voice acting, all of it has to come together. The timing, all of it has to just hit right. And that's when you get something like lightning in a bottle. And as I said earlier, you had to be there. You know, when this hit, I was 7 or 8. You know, and this was on when Force 5 came on with, you know, Grandizer and Guy King and all that. So there was nothing else like it, and still nothing else like it. Everything else is derivative of all that 70s stuff.
I felt sad to extinguish Yamato, but I believe that if you are moved by the maturing love between Kodai and Yuki, then the goal of this work is achieved.
I originally became a manga artist because I always wanted to do animation. I'm a diehard anime fan, and I had to become involved in every aspect of the process. In the end, I just couldn't keep up with it all. That's why I limited my involvement in the later Yamato projects. Working on this series was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me, for which I owe Mr. Nishizaki a debt of gratitude. If not for him, I'm sure it would have been a long time before I did anything in the field. I was there at the right time, and I'm very happy about that.
When all else is said, the man whose passion drove Yamato into the realm of legends is the most qualified to provide the last word.
My dream was to explore the infinite potential of humanity. I expressed this dream through Yamato, believing it would affirm the value of romanticism beyond the limits of cold space. Yamato shows that the way to achieve this is to believe in the human race and the future, never giving up in a desperate situation and putting everything at risk. In the 20th century, human beings experienced 2 world wars and the slow destruction of the ecosystem. In Japan, people have stagnated in exchange for a stable lifestyle, and this has brought on a sense of powerlessness. The cynicism and violence seen among the younger generation is a reflection of this pessimistic trend. Yamato has consistently shown that this can be overcome. It may not be easy, but mankind has the wisdom and the capacity. The main theme of Yamato is this optimistic view of the world, as well as ourselves.
Yeah, a hell of a show. And it's just, as a kid, even just an imaginative person, it's just it fueled so much, especially when, you know, you would have to like really read or really get into stuff. When was this made? In 2005, Voyager Entertainment. I imagine this was put out when they reissued some DVDs or something. That's why I tried to just upload this wholesale, and I wanted to do live streaming. Well, I've done live streaming before. I did it for like 4 or 5 years. I had another channel. But life just wouldn't allow it. I wanted to do this over 2 years ago, but it was good enough because I enjoy the editing and stuff like that. So life is finally, I've made my life more available to do what I want to do. So I'm going to do this, and it's been fun editing, but I don't want to mess around with copyrights. And I enjoy live streaming. I enjoy hanging out and talking about stuff. And if you like a comedy club kind of humor, you know, welcome aboard. Come by and just enjoy yourself, because I love all this stuff. Everything I got up here, the edits and everything. So I appreciate everyone who's come by, especially Starblazers. I've got some catching up to do on Starblazers. I saw the first 2 seasons, and then that was it. And I saw live action, which was all right. I'll always say that was all right. And that's it. So I got some catching up to do. And I guess that'll do it for tonight. Thanks for swinging by. Brad, Fender Gibbs, and Dr. Jones for hanging out in the chat. And yeah, we'll do more of this in the future. Hopefully by next week, do another live stream. Maybe start doing some reviews of the Starblazers that I didn't see. Maybe catch up on some of that and see if I can piece something together. I want to spend a lot more time doing this on the channel instead of doing edits. But I hope to do both. And again, thanks so much. I can't say how much I really appreciate it. I miss doing this. And that's it for now. Until then, peace and love.
The idea is floating around that we may turn art by computer at a later stage of the device. There is so much misunderstanding about the so-called electronic brain, which is supposed to...